I would see movies that showed the disciples kind of looking like this. Then I started studying Jewish culture. And what I found out is that young boys would start going to school. You would graduate and basically be in manhood at 13. And then at that point, you started an apprenticeship for whatever job you were going to have for life. Some of them around 14, 15 years of age would go into the house of study. And this was a place where the rabbis would come in and they would walk up to students and they would use those two words, follow me. Now, if my theory is correct, I think the disciples looked a bit more like this. I think they were teenagers who were probably in some type of apprenticeship when he called them. There's some Bible that I think backs this up. Number one, in the Gospels, Jesus is constantly referring to them as his children or as his little ones. Typically in Jewish culture, at the age of 18, young men would take a wife. Well, we know from the Bible, it only tells us about one person having a wife, being Peter, whose mother-in-law was healed at some point. So it's possible none of the others had wives because they weren't even 18 yet. There was Capernaum, where all the disciples decided to go with Jesus there, and there was a tax that had to be paid by adult men. And Jesus tells Peter, go down to the river, grab a fish, open its mouth, and take the money out of the fish's mouth and pay the taxes for me and you. But what about everybody else? Maybe they didn't need to pay the tax because they weren't of age to pay. Some of the things that the disciples did that made zero sense if they was 50 years old. There's a story about the disciples in Luke chapter 9 deciding to go and preach the gospel, and when people rejected them, they said, Jesus, can we call fire down on them? Well, y'all know how much teenagers like fire. Luke 22, they're sitting around a table arguing over which one of us is the greatest disciple. At 30 and 40 years old, that's dumb. But at 13 and 14, that makes a lot more sense. My personal favorite. Can y'all imagine a 45-year-old man? Hey, mama, come here. I don't want Jesus to think I'm crazy. Can you ask him? And mamas, like typically do, yeah, baby, I'll ask. That would make zero sense for a grown man to send his mama to go ask Jesus about where he can sit in heaven. Anybody here, parents of a teenager, and you be asking him, don't you understand that's wrong? Don't you understand that's dumb? Don't you understand that's not how the real world works? Jesus was asking them this type of stuff. What's wrong with you? What's your problem? Why couldn't you cast that out? Why y'all so worried about this storm? They was on Jesus' nerves because Jesus was the first youth pastor.